Hey guys, this is Clarice. Welcome to my channel. We're going to be talking about Quentin Tarantino as I do this kind of very Tarantino-esque based look that's really inspired by the 90s, Mia Wallace and Steve Buscemi's eyes from Reservoir Dogs. So if you're interested in joining me, welcome. This is my channel. I am Clarice. I'm a trained actor, and this is my very first ever Makeup Movie Monday.
Makeup Movie Monday. Makeup Movie. Makeup Movie Monday. Makeup Movie. Quentin Tarantino. Movie Monday. Makeup Movie.
So, what I want to do today is kind of take an iconic look that many of us know, which is that Mia Wallace iconic, like Pulp Fiction makeup. But it's quite 90s. It takes a little bit from the supermodel era of the 90s. It takes a little bit from the grunge scene. So I'm gonna kind of take a bit of that makeup and then combine it with Steve Buscemi's eyes from Reservoir Dogs. I know it's probably not what you're thinking. Doesn't make much sense. Why would you do that? Look at this man's eyes in this specific shot. Tell me that wouldn't make a beautiful eye makeup look. Like, it looks great. Same with him, same with Tim Roth in Reservoir Dogs, and same with Michael Madsen in Reservoir Dogs. Every single one of these men's look, just basically all the makeup done on the men of Reservoir Dogs. The point of this is just kind of admiration. I just wanted a place to be able to kind of admire this artwork and share it with people and see if any of you guys enjoy it too. And I love dissecting and analyzing why it is that art moves us. So just on this journey, we're gonna talk about directors from the past and the present and see how their art we can learn from times of yesterday and kind of bring them together into today to make the film and the art of tomorrow. So Quentin Tarantino, I believe, was a video store clerk, if you guys remember, you know, places like Blockbuster. He basically consumed almost all knowledge of all film ever. I don't think it was during this time, it's probably been throughout his life, but this man knows so many films. He knows from the most current things to the most obscure. Like, you can't even find those films anymore because they are like locked in a vault. Because they're so old, from like the 1910s and 20s. Like, he knows this content. He's seen this content. He has access to this somehow.
Salutations, everyone. It's Future Clarice offering you today's parental advisory and disclaimer because, well, Video Clarice forgot to do it. This is our first video, and so we're still trying to figure stuff out. Nevertheless, warning. Quentin Tarantino films, while brilliant in their own merit, are very much hard R-rated films that contain content such as excessive profanity, some dated comedy humor, sexual content, extreme violence, gore, feet, gratuitous blood splatters, more feet, uncomfortable subject matter with or without involving feet. Basically, just very adult content. If any of these things do not appeal to you in your personal movie watching experience, that is perfectly okay. You can choose not to watch these movies. However, for the sake of this discussion, I thought it best to offer this advisory early so that any films you choose to watch are at your own risk. And kids, if you are under 17, please don't watch these films without your parents' permission. Also, spoiler warning for the rest of this video. I don't fully spoil all the movies, but if you don't know them, you probably won't understand some of my points. Other than that, I flat out discuss the ending, so sorry. You clicked on an analysis video, so yeah, spoilers. And to add on to our previous topic about the entirety of Tarantino's extensive film knowledge, this man never went to film school, people. He just watched so much film that it'd be natural to fall into a style of mere imitation to learn how to create cinema. At times, elements of his films have been perceived as homages to older Hollywood films, and at worst, he has been accused of blatant plagiarism. However, he actively denies the sentiment of paying homages, saying that great artists steal. They do not do homages. And more notably, taking pride in admitting that he basically steals from every single movie ever made. This is similar to Picasso's quote that says, "Good artists copy, but great artists steal." With this in mind, I think it's important to understand what it is that Tarantino does with this in his films. Where others would take or copy from earlier works and at times make clear carbon copies of the old subject matter, Tarantino takes it and creates something new and entirely original, stealing elements from films past, but combining them with his notable style of quick razor-sharp dialogue and stylized graphic violence, or his nonlinear storytelling. He creates his own brand of Tarantino-esque art that is a mix of old and new cinema that's just so captivating to watch. So now, back to the video. Let's discuss Tarantino's approach to dialogue.
So we're going to talk about something when it comes to Tarantino. This man The king of dialogue, guys. The king of dialogue. Why is he the king of dialogue? One of the things that makes Tarantino is his scripts. Most of them are written primarily by him. They come from his noggin. His ideas are his own. I was watching an interview with him just a couple of days ago doing research, and you're hearing him kind of talking about when he was writing the Pulp Fiction script. And he's talking about how in his stories and what he's seen in good filmmaking, if you're being taken into the life of someone that you'd never be, like say a gangster, like Vincent Jules in Pulp Fiction, you know, they're not like gangster life 24/7. There are people living their lives. There are people who go on vacations, like Vince. He goes to Amsterdam. Jules, and he has these moral questions, and he's morally conscious. Jules is a very morally conscious gangster, and I love it so much. But those are little nuances that you add and layers to a character that just makes them more human. If there's any of the many quotable scenes from Pulp Fiction outside of the ones that we know, like, you know, the Ezekiel 25. It's like the Royale with cheese. Like, that's a line that many people know. This is just a conversation. It's literally a mundane conversation, but something that Tarantino found in this interview, Tarantino is talking about that feeds into his dialogue making. It's this idea of, he's like, what are those things that, you know, what would people be talking about? If they're sitting in a car, if they're sitting in a car, what are they talking about? They're not talking about their mission. They're talking about bullcrap. Dialogue that informs character, but through a conversation. Like Reservoir Dogs, the beginning signing sequence, they're talking about a Madonna song, the tipping system of America. Hateful Eight, hilarious. It's just freaking funny. So part of the reason I was really interested and excited to do Tarantino, other than the fact that I love the director, is that every now and then I just always think of my first experience watching a Tarantino film. I was 4 years old, back in my home country, watching it with my dad, and it was Kill Bill. No, I did not choose this. Why would I? At the time, my biological father had just gotten a whole bunch of movies, and he wasn't really watching them, he had just gotten them. So he got Kill Bill, a super, like, gore fest heavy shark movie. Like, it wasn't something like Jaws, it was like an open water type shark movie. Mind you, I'm 4 years old, so like all of this stuff is terrifying. If anyone knows how Kill Bill starts, it opens with like her getting shot in the head in black and white, and then one of the first scenes is her literally murdering Vivica A. Fox with a knife. And so the 4-year-old Grease is just like, okay, time to watch a movie with dad. And then it's like, what is this? Why am I still here? I was petrified, and I think I went to my room and played with my toys for a good chunk of it. But then Oren's origin story sequence comes in, and that's where everything turns into like a miniature anime. And it's great because that medium really expresses all that despair and the corruption, the gore that's in it, and her tragic past. But as a kid, I just thought my parents were gonna get murdered. And I'm like scared out of my life, because I think that was part of that age where, again, like, movies are make-believe, but they could be real and they could instigate real fears. Like the fact that I kind of didn't learn how to swim for many years after I watched that shark movie, because I just see a whole bunch of blood and water. And that was scary. I thought I was gonna get eaten by a shark in a pool, because I'm pretty sure that this movie was about people getting eaten by a shark in a pool. So watching the Oren sequence, especially because my parents are both very big into martial arts, I legit thought that we were gonna have like samurai assassins come in and kill my parents. And that made me very scared. So I left to go play with my Barbies, I think. I went and played with my dolls. My dad's asleep. He's like dead asleep. I don't think anyone's watching this movie at this point. No one's really watching me. So I'm just kind of like, is there anyone thinking about the potential trauma that could be happening to me? Anyone considering my mental development? No. Okay. Yeah, and then the last thing I remember was just them scalping Lucy Liu's head. Also, I had an Uncle Bill. When you think about these kinds of larger than life, almost cartoon-like characters, there's so much that goes into creating a character. But when you're working within genre, which is what Tarantino does, he works within genre, but he kind of makes it his own, and he adds something new that you don't expect in any of the films that he makes, and you can see it. And this kind of 70s genre, you see the samurai assassin warriors, and you're seeing then also the story, the traumatic story. I think to wrap up the 4-year-old trauma, I watched the movies when I was older, and I actually became empowered by them and now love them. So it all turned out fine. But to bring it back, as much as it's this kind of core violent revenge film saga, if you choose to look at it this way, or at least it's what I got out of it when I saw it when I was much older, it's also this tale of a woman regaining her power and asserting her power back to the people who severely traumatized and oppressed her and gave her the largest tragedy of her life. And the desire for revenge is very common, is a very, very common theme within Tarantino films. But if you follow it through, especially in the way that it's told and with its characters, like, these aren't just one-note awful people. And a great example is the end of Oren Ishii, and the end of Bill, where you see both. You don't just see a bad guy versus the hero we've been watching who we want to beat these killers. Which, yes, perhaps we do, because we know what she's been through. But we also know what Oren's been through. We know the kind of life that she's lived. We know why she does these things. We may not understand why they did all of this to the bride in this awful way. But if you allow yourself to have some sympathy for them and to really see these characters for more than just the baseline, when all of them are faced with this angel of death that is the bride, they accept their wrongs. They hope to atone. They kind of, in their own ways, atone. Oren even apologizes. You could interpret that perhaps she wasn't apologizing for everything, but she was apologizing for something. And you can see it. You can even see it in Beatrix's eyes. You can see that she accepts this apology. Doesn't change her mission. Doesn't change what she's gonna do. She's still gonna dig on this blood-filled path. But there's a sense of mutual respect, and making of amends for what was done. And that's that's one of those concepts that is incredibly human, that you don't see a lot in films like that. In regular just revenge flicks. A regular revenge flick would just show you a whole bunch of blood and gore and violence, and yes, that is in a lot of Tarantino movies, but you also have the human element. You could look at something like Pulp Fiction. You could look at Vince and you could look at Jules, and you could see that they're still products of the choices they make, and their lives are products of the choice they make. And in the storytelling, you see what happens when you make a different kind of a choice. Because when you see Vince is never changing to the experience that both him and Jules had, which was this sense that this divine intervention, that God somehow kept them alive. Jules is on and on and on about it, wanting to make a difference, wanting to change, wanting to get out of this life. He's realizing and becoming self-aware that he's like, you know what, no. It's like, if I'm here, there's something more to my life here. And then you got Vince being like, nah, it's just a whole bunch of crap. It's crazy, you need to forget about it. And we know in the story that Vince doesn't make it. Because you can't just say because he attains to these ideals, but because he doesn't change. He stays the same. Whereas you see that Jules, not only does Jules have this new perspective and this new change, but then they're both crossed with the same circumstance, which is the robbers at the cafe. And you can see how, again, Vince is very like, I'm gonna shoot this girl down. I'm on a mission. I'm protecting my guy. And he's just doing what he knows. But then on the other hand, you have Jules, who gets why he's doing this. But then you got him teaching him a lesson. It's like, you know what? I'm buying your life. I'm buying you your life. Do something else with it, so I can also do something else with mine. And that's a very powerful thing. If you look at the story of these characters who you've just seen this man murders someone who pissed off his boss. And that's where the sense of hyperrealism, are we condoning these acts of violence? Are we condoning these things? No, not at all. But we're just seeing a different type of person be faced with choices that any person could be faced with, and seeing where that humanity lies, seeing where that morality lies. Heck, you can look at Bruce Willis's character in Pulp Fiction and see that moral dilemma, because he starts off being a bad guy. He could have not made the deal. He wasn't put to a bullet in his head saying that he has to side with Marcellus. He has to do it. He didn't have that. He could have said no. But he didn't. He chose actively to screw him over for his own benefit. But then when you see the progression of punishment that is induced to the people who do the bad things, and then he has that moral dilemma of, do I just leave and bounce, or do I save this guy who wants to kill me? And he chooses to save the guy. Again, this doesn't absolve you of your actions, of what you've done. But this does change you and give you responsibility for who you are moving forward. And that is a powerful lesson that any person can afford the time to learn. Something like Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, personally, I loved it. One, for the 60s references. That's a great example of how much love goes into a film production. You can tell that not only Tarantino, but the people he works with love what they do. As an actor, I really love seeing that peek behind the curtain, and that little kind of meta nod, that if anyone is watching that has ever worked on films or seen how long the days can be, or how mundane certain things can seem, and sometimes the anxiety of wondering if you're good enough. That trailer scene. I mean, I am not gonna say I've had that, but I have definitely had my fair share, especially in acting school, of stressful situations where you're just like, why can't you do this right? Why can't you get it? What do you have to do to get it? This overwhelming anxiety. You can see so much how an actor like Rick Dalton, who's done this one shtick his whole career, and the world is changing. The world around him is changing. And it's petrifying. It's scary as heck, because he doesn't know if he's gonna make it. So I just found that aspect of the film incredibly compelling. Also, the third act, the entirety of that third act is just, I have not seen a third act as satisfying as that third act in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. I think Sharon Tate as well. I think Margot Robbie did a great job at doing exactly what she was supposed to for the story. Which I remember hearing in an interview where Margot was talking about how Quentin approached her about the role of Sharon. And he says that he told her, he's like, remember that she is the heartbeat of the story. She's the living heartbeat of the story. And you can really, if you watch the film, you can see how that is. You can see how she's not meant to be a symbol. She's not made to be some martyr. She's not made to be anything other than a human. She's just a girl living her life. And you can tell that she's flawed. She has her flaws, she has her things, but she also is just a ray of light and sunshine, and you can see it. She gives a ride to one of the hitchhikers, the people that everyone else doesn't want to help. She gives them a ride kindly. She kindly accepts when people don't know who she is. She doesn't demand any sort of status because of how famous she is. It's one of those things that's incredibly tragic when you know the story and you know what happened to her. It's one of those where I appreciate that it's an art form that it just gives you a glimpse of what could have been, in a bit of a hopeful, very gratuitously satisfying way, given what Cliff and Rick Dalton do. If you haven't seen it, I'm not going to spoil it for you. I'm just going to tell you, go watch it. But it really can be a beautiful thing, and it's something that's kind of upsetting sometimes when people miss the points of that form of art, because it's okay if it's not your cup of tea, but sometimes when you misinterpret and you completely miss the point of why they did what they did. Sometimes I just find that it can be, instead of judging, which is obviously it's going to be the first thing that's going to happen, you you can always just share your opinion. Share it with someone. Like, say if you were someone who watched some of these Tarantino films that I've discussed and you never thought of them that way, you never considered them that deep, never looked any further and surface level, any more than the surface gore fest that they are, you know, I just kind of encourage you to take a look. If you're a film enthusiast or an actor, I'd really recommend you take a look, just so that you can study those actors and really see how they handle that kind of subject matter, how they handle it with realism, how they add on those nuances of the genre, such as the humor, the wit, the cunning that it takes to be these kinds of characters, because it's incredibly hard. It is very easy on the fine line of building character to go from being a human being to being a cartoon. And the difference is incredibly stark because anyone can see that. Anyone can tell you, you don't need to be a film buff to look at a movie and say that's bad acting. No one needs to. Anyone can do that because we as humans, we know when something's off. We can tell. But when you do it right, like in many of these movies, many of those actors do, it is something to behold. And my gosh, is it entertaining. It's entertaining. And there's nothing wrong with being entertained by it. Now, because we're running out of time, I'm going to talk about Inglourious Basterds. So Inglourious Basterds is probably one of my, if not on most occasions, probably my most favorite film by Tarantino. I also didn't talk about Django. Django's great. Go watch it if you want to. Revenge film, love story, great. But if there's ever a time to watch an actor be a damn good actor, it is to literally watch Christoph Waltz in anything he does with Tarantino. Now, important notice. Why is he good? What makes him good? One, his character work. There's so many questions that you have to ask, and you have to get so specific about why it is what you do, what your motivations are. They need to be simple, but they can't be like, oh my gosh, I just can't, I respect it so much. Love it. I love seeing it. I love seeing the products of it. And that's not just to say only Christoph Waltz. I mean, someone like Daniel Bruhl, he's brilliant. I just recently saw a whole bunch of supercuts of that man. He is a gifted, multilinguistic actor. This man speaks in like 4 or 5 freaking languages, and every one of them he's really good at. Having that level of control and freedom in what you do in a language that is not your own is insane. And I'm interested in watching more films with Daniel Bruhl. There's also great characters like Shoshana Dreyfus. She's probably one of like my favorite Tarantino heroines because she's great. She's complex. She's very flawed. I love that they're never clearly good people. They're never clearly bad people. Maybe with the exception of Sharon Tate, because we explained why. But I love that because, you know, it's just, again, more adding to that humanity of these tales of how, you know, sometimes morale, especially when you're working in these super, like, extremist atmospheres, like World War II, where anyone can do awful things to anyone because it's World War II. There is very clearly a wrong side. But the other side, that's supposed to be the good guys, aren't doing good things. Like, I mean, the bastards are still murdering people. Are they murdering murderers? Yes, but you have your own moral ways to think about that. But I appreciate that it's never just cut and clear, like, these are good people, and we absolve them of all their bad acts because they're the good guys. It's like Shoshana. She does these things, but she still dies in the end. So her win is bittersweet. She gets what she hoped for, but at what's the cost? Hey guys, I'm back. So I know that I definitely look a lot different than the last time that you saw me. So in the middle of finishing this look, I realized that as much as I've connected Mia Wallace and Steve Buscemi's eyes, I ended up actually looking more like Esmeralda Villalobos. You guys see it? But because the camera's running out of space, I really looked forward to this. I hope that you guys enjoy. Leave a comment. Let me know if you've ever seen a Tarantino film, what Tarantino film impacted you the most? And if you haven't, take a look at one and tell me how your experience was with it. This is a channel for admiration, admiration and appreciation. So make sure that you keep the things positive, and leave the criticisms for maybe like a movie review at some point. But I hope that you guys have a great day. I hope that you enjoyed, maybe you learned something, or get inspired to watch some films. But I hope you have a great day. Thanks, and bye.
Make a movie. Quentin Tarantino. Movie Monday. Make a movie. Make a movie Monday. Make a movie. Quentin Tarantino. Movie Monday. Make a movie Monday. Make a movie. Make a movie. Quentin Tarantino. Make a movie Monday. 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 Make a movie. Make a movie Monday. 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 Make a movie Monday.